And welcome into the Week 2 recap show, where we're bringing you our 3 and Out. I'm your host, Ian Power, joined as always by Matt Vitale, Frankie Santiago, and joining us from TrashTalk Media, it is Nick. Nick, you want to say hi to everyone?
Hey, what's going on, Fantasy Four Pack Clan? Name's Nick from Trash Talk Sports. We'll pretty much cover everything going on in the NFL, and we put out daily content covering everything up to the know. So if you need any advice on what's going on, or you need to get up to date on what's going on in the NFL, check us out at Trash Talk Sports.
Yep, and we'll make sure to link them down in the description, so that way you don't have to try and memorize the handle or anything like that. So when you're looking for where to click to follow people, you can find them down in the description below. You can also follow the Fantasy Four Pack at Fantasy Four Pack underscore Ian the Spoon and Senpai Koala. And Nick, I believe your channel's handle is Trash Talk underscore Media, correct?
It should be, yes.
Perfect. So we'll have all that information to make it easy to grab as well. But definitely make sure to hit the follow button on those accounts so that you can get all of our musings and general football related thoughts. We're not going to do any news today. Like I said, this is a newer segment for us. We're still playing with how we want to have it all set up. We're given that this episode is being filmed during the Sunday night game. We're going to hold off on any weekend news until the waiver episode tomorrow. So definitely tune in then, when we can just bring you the full slate of who's broken and who isn't. So I think we're ready to dive into the 3 and outs. If you guys don't have any qualms about it, I'll lead off with my first 3 and out.
Sure.
It's I'm gonna talk about Cooper Kupp for my first. The guy that we were hyping up quite a bit on the show this whole off season.
To my own detriment, as I was not able to get him in any drafts. Sadly.
I have a few shares myself.
Yeah, I mean I've been a Cooper Kupp fan for years, so I'm loving how this season's starting out. I managed to get him in most of my leagues this year, which is really great for me. Love that. But he is off to an absolutely torrid start. I mean, God, he has over 2 weeks with Stafford under the helm. He's got 21 targets, 16 catches, 271 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, this man is sitting at a 37.5% target share in this offense through 2 weeks. Like, do I expect it to continue at that pace? No, that's absurd. Although I won't be mad if it does. But I don't see any reason why this isn't going to be sort of the status quo for Cooper Kupp moving forward, as far as his involvement in the offense, at least. I mean, we've seen him be clear and away the best receiver on this team for multiple weeks running now. He and Stafford like to go get breakfast together apparently before games. Like they've got a little bromance going. I saw it being bandied about on Twitter today. Everyone was like, "Oh, that's great! Stafford found his Diggs." Similarly to how Josh Allen took off when they got Diggs. Now Stafford has Cooper Kupp, and it is insane what they're doing out there. I mean, Cooper Kupp is, I believe, through today's afternoon games, I believe he was the number 1 receiver in fantasy. And then the best part about all this is anyone who believed in Cooper Kupp and reached to get him this. I don't see this. Maybe the touchdowns stop flowing quite so freely, because it'd be insane if he just scores every game. That's like breaking the touchdown record type stuff. But yeah. I don't see any reason why the yardage and the targets aren't at least going to maintain. He looks like he's a locked and loaded wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. I think the only thing I'm sad about is his DraftKings price is finally going to go up next week. $6K was absurd.
Yeah. Well, that was a good point for you to bring up there, because my first point was just the game as a whole. Colts versus Rams, that was just a great game today. That was like playoff football caliber. Both sides of the ball, there was just so much to cover that I could have made 3 points out of that whole game, but I decided to just kind of pack them into quick hits. Michael Pittman showed out like we weren't expecting, but we all hoped.
He heard us talking about how he was being put on notice, and
oh yeah, 8 receptions, 12 targets, 123 yards. Only thing you like to see in there is a touchdown, but I'll take those stats right there. And like I said, with such a great defense, that's exactly what I wanted to see from this kid. Wentz, he looked like the shot in the arm that this offense needed to really start propelling itself forward and be a legitimate threat in the playoffs. I mean, he was running to extend drives. He was diving for extra yards out there. Unfortunately, it sounds like he did get an ankle injury, so hopefully that's mild. But yeah, I liked everything I saw from him, but they didn't win the game. The Rams on both sides of the ball were just amazing. The D-line for the Rams was just...
Aside from that, like, really weird punt that just did not work out.
Right, and that's kind of where I'm like giving them a pass. Like, I'm not... The special teams, obviously, they got to work on that. But
sure,
the D-line was just every play... Wentz had to move around that pocket to make something happen, and there was a lot of times he was just having to dump it off. So I think that actually played into Cooper Kupp's style there, where he had to go for the shorter routes and connect with him. But I mean, they stuffed him early in the red zone, forced turnovers, sacks. I mean, like they were doing everything you want from a front seven today.
Sure.
And I mean, Jalen Ramsey secured the game with an interception. So I was just going back and forth, and both of these quarterbacks are in new systems, and they look like they're already gelling. If the Rams keep this up, they're a legit threat for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, the Rams are my NFC pick to go to the Super Bowl. So,
yeah. And I think the Colts are just a few pieces away from being like them.
Sure. Frankie, what about you? What's your first takeaway for this Week 2 slate?
Well, I hope nobody listened to me about starting Jameis Winston this week.
Yeah.
He had a great game last week, and we thought, the touchdowns are probably going to come down a little bit. He's probably going to throw the ball a little bit more. Well, he did that. He threw for no touchdowns, and he threw the ball 2 more times. So, baby steps. No, he looked terrible. I don't know if this was a full result of, the Saints had a lot of coaches out because of COVID. Marshall Lattimore was out. There were a couple other defensive players that were just not there, and they were just getting absolutely routed by the Panthers. I mean, they just looked all out of sorts. The game was ugly. I had to keep just flipping back between that and another game because it was hard to watch at one point.
I just didn't put that one on one of my screens.
Yeah,
easy decision for me.
I mean, I wanted to see if Winston could do it 2 weeks in a row and I wanted to see how he would have thrown more passes, but nope, didn't really work out. He did run one into, well, we'll say air quotes, save his day to score him 7 fantasy points.
Sure.
But it's hard to press to say when he comes back. I think the only Saints that I'm locking in are probably Kamara. The wide receivers, I mean, he does have the touchdown upside, and we know that he can put up those high throw, high yardage, high touchdown games. But I think that right now, this could just be an anomaly game, just like the first game was, we'll say, an anomaly game. But I'm just not going to I'm not going to roll out wide receivers next week with confidence. If I have to, I will, but again, it's I don't want to trust that.
No, I would agree with you. Like the lack of depth in this Saints wide receiver core was showing this week.
Yeah. And I mean, even as much as Kamara should be a locked-in starter for anyone, I mean, look at his stat line from today. It wasn't anything special.
Yeah, this is a Saints team that I think is going to struggle until they get Michael Thomas back out there. Nick, what about you? What's your first takeaway for us this week?
Yeah, so, I mean, Tyler Lockett had another massive touchdown this week. That 70-yard bomb from Russell Wilson. But a massive stat lineup for Tyler Lockett, but I just didn't see anything after that. And I know, Tyler Lockett, he's one of those more inconsistent players. He has really, really good games during the season, but then he has some duds. And it seems like his luck is coming early in the season. Two big touchdowns last week, 1 big touchdown this week. Stat line looks fantastic. This is the time I'm looking to sell Tyler Lockett. I don't believe that he's going to be this big weapon for this offense for the entire season. I think DK Metcalf is going to get worked in. I think that a lot of teams are just double, triple covering him right now. And if Tyler Lockett continues this, he's going to be the guy that gets double, triple covered, and his stat line is going to be near nothing. So I really like Tyler Lockett as somebody to trade right now while his price is as high as it's going to be all season long. I think that you can get an absolute haul for a guy like Tyler Lockett. I just don't believe that he is a true number one that's going to put out this amount of points every single week. So somebody I definitely want to stay, somebody I'd want to sell if I have, somebody I'd want to probably stay away from if I don't have him. I don't want to trade for this. I believe that, he's just not going to keep this up, and he's going to have a lot of duds moving forward.
I was worried with how you were starting that. I was like, we are we're an anti-Tyler Lockett show here, but
Yeah, that's literally exactly my
Nobody
sentiment
tell
after
Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett.
yeah, no, it's just so everyone's victory lapping already because Tyler Lockett's had 2 good games. Like, well, the bad ones are coming. Don't you worry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree with that take 100%. I think I'm going to transition from that to another ugly situation that is unfolding on the field. Unfortunately, this is one where you probably don't have the ability to sell, even if you want to. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but the Bucs running backs are completely untrustworthy and borderline unusable for fantasy purposes. I mean, Bruce Arians seems determined to make fantasy managers regret drafting and rostering his running backs. It's almost a dead split down the middle for how they're being used. And like, to their credit, they're both playing well, but not well enough or prolifically enough for it to be worth it for fantasy purposes. I mean, this is a high-powered offense that for some reason can't seem to get either of them enough work in the rushing or passing game to make them do anything more than a low-end flex play on a week-to-week basis. I think the biggest thing that's crippling their ability to be consistent producers for me too is the fact that Brady is out there doing his best Aaron Rodgers impression. Just it doesn't matter if he's 50 yards out or 5 yards out, he's throwing it. Like I don't know if you guys were watching this game today. I was, but like they had a play that was set up by a penalty, and they were on the 1 yard line, and Brady threw an end zone fade to Mike Evans. Like,
Yeah.
like the obvious running situation. Brady's like, nah, I'm throwing it 4 touchdowns, fam. Just like, and then he went on to throw more touchdowns after that. Like, I don't see any sort of upside in this offense for running backs. Like I was off of them all off season, and 2 weeks into the season, I feel like I probably made the right decision, because unless one of them gets injured, I don't see how this situation turns itself around to make either of them fantasy relevant, unfortunately.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Chiefs, where CEH has a little bit of the same issues, where they're a very pass heavy team.
But at least CEH is getting all of the touches.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The difference is CEH is one person. This is split among 2 people.
Yeah, I believe CEH seeded like a single touch last week, and so far in this game, he's been getting almost all of the work. I'm hands off on this backfield until further notice. They should be riding the pine unless you are in just injury hell already.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, Tally, what's your second take here?
Keep the negative train rolling.
Woo! Negativity!
As much as things change, some things will never change. The Jets of old are back. And once again, Bill trounces yet another young quarterback. Zach Wilson put up 19 completions, 210 yards with 4 interceptions and 0 touchdowns. I've already seen everyone out there. It's just like all these great quarterbacks, and somehow the Jets keep missing them. We all expected this coming into this game, that Bill was going to be able to put up numbers, but I wanted to see what Zach Wilson could do against a premier defense, even without our top corner. But once again, it was just couldn't get anything done against this defense. And
Sure.
I think the funniest thing of all of this is the guy who just after his big come-out game, Mr. Corey Davis, put out that statement that he's a wide receiver 1 in this league. And I said, sure, go ahead and prove it, because you did it week 1, but week 2, 2 catches for 8 yards. I understand the tough defenses, you can't really quite produce, but if you're going to be a wide receiver 1 in this league, you'd have to be able to produce better than 8 yards. So, and as everyone expected, the lead dog on this team was Braxton Berrios with 7 catches, 11 targets, and 73 yards. We all predicted that one. That was clear and obvious.
I mean, it's a very Patriots thing to do, though, to take away your opponent's number one option. So I'm not surprised that because of how good the defense is and how good Bill is at scheming it up, I'm not surprised at all that Corey Davis had a bad day. I guess I'm maybe surprised it was as bad as it was, but that's what Bill's known for. Take away your opponent's number one option, make them beat you with their tertiary guys.
He had Zach Wilson in hell.
Yeah, I mean that was basically just like the Darnold game where he was seeing ghosts.
Yeah,
Like they were just out there, and it's surprising too when you look at the stats. Honestly, they were very even, and the Jets had the ball for almost 4 more minutes than the Patriots. They had more first downs, but I mean, once again, this league is dictated by turnovers.
yeah, those picks will cripple you.
Yeah, picks will cripple you. So that's why the Pats are able to just kind of walk away with this one.
Frankie, you got any positivity for us, or are you keeping us on the
I
the
was
downward
gonna
slide?
I was gonna do the other side of the ball from my last take, but we're gonna keep the negativity going because I'm feeling a little bit mean right now.
Sure.
The Cowboys did win the game, so I'm happy about that. But from a fantasy perspective, if I drafted Zeke at, say just 5 off boards, and then, later somebody else got Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
He was listed as the RB41 going into the season.
Sure.
If I just rattle off these two stats, running back 1, 16 for 71 and a touchdown. Running back 41, 12 for 106 and 1. They both did about the same out of the backfield. But why is Zeke splitting carries with Pollard? Like, not even like, a 60-40. Why is he just completely splitting carries after, getting paid? Mm-hmm. He looks sluggish out there. It's not like the Chargers were, this kind of goes back to, what I said in the countdown show is where good offenses are going to play even good defenses. They're going to play each other well. The game was great, but it's not like the Chargers were choosing, we're gonna tackle Zeke and we're gonna let Pollard just run down the field and score. No, Zeke is out there. He looks like he can't find anywhere to run. He looks sluggish. He looks slow. Pollard looked the exact opposite today. He was breaking off big runs. He was finding where to move between the tackles. It just, I don't understand how. I would be sad if the guy who I drafted, or even let go undrafted, was pacing my running back 5 and being more efficient doing it. It just looks like Zeke doesn't give a shit out there. I think Zeke put up like 16, 17 points today. Pollard put up 22. If this continues, I'm kind of worried about, where Zeke's going to finish the year. He might not finish as a top 10 running back if this happens.
At least the Cowboys only gave him $50 million guaranteed, and like $90 million total.
Yeah, this is what as the Zeke owner who did take him in the 5 hole, it is definitely something that's on my radar, and I'm worried about it. I would be far more worried if it was the game script of last week where we saw almost all passing with very little running. So when you're splitting, when there's barely any running and you're splitting, that's even worse. But at least today, 16 carries, not great, but it's still something there. But he might be one to look at trading away and seeing if you can finagle in another top running back for somebody who's a Zeke homer or something like that. But you might not be able to with the clear split and how Pollard did today.
Sure. I'm not on trade away Zeke yet, especially because it's so hard to find if he's going to get 16 carries even while splitting, fine. 16 carries is still bell cow amounts of touches. It's no Derrick Henry 35, but no one does that. So I'm not trying to move Zeke unless I can find a really attractive offer. I do kind of just laugh long term about this because I was curious. I was looking up his contract. You guys were talking about that. The first year where there's a potential out for the Cowboys for this absolute albatross of a contract is 2023. So they don't even have a way to get out of this short of trading him to someone for 2 more years.
Nice.
There you go, Jerry. Spending your money wisely. All right, Nick. What's your second take here?
Yeah, so I want to stay negative with you guys. I want to talk about the Miami Dolphins, who
on pause real fast.
All right, yeah. So I want to talk about the Miami Dolphins. They're down bad right now with that injury to Tua. Even before the injury to Tua, this offense just could not get going, couldn't do anything, and that's against a Buffalo Bills defense that they've had success against before. Now with Tua going out with that rib injury, who knows how long he's out? And with Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback, Myles Gaskin, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker, these guys just can't perform with Jacoby Brissett under center. They're going to suffer, and we saw that. None of them had big fantasy games. None of them were able to get even close to scoring this week. I just think it's going to be bad for them, especially moving forward, because when you look at their next 3 matchups, at the Raiders next week, then they're home against the Colts in week 4, and then week 5 they're facing at Tampa Bay. So these are very tough defenses to go up against, very similar to the Buffalo Bills. And I just don't think that any of these guys, any of these weapons that the Miami Dolphins have to offer are going to be viable fantasy options for anybody. I think that they're just going to continue to suffer. The Miami Dolphins, even if they have Tua, he's not going to be 100%. They're not going to be able to move the ball that well. I don't like any option right now for the Miami Dolphins, and it's unfortunate because a lot of people had some high hopes for Myles Gaskin or what Jalen Waddle could do. Even when Will Fuller comes back, he's a guy a lot of people were drafting who have high hopes for him. He's a burner that was used as such with the Houston Texans. We're not going to see those plays because the offensive line is going to have a tough time holding up. Jacoby Brissett doesn't have that arm. Tua's not going to have the strength to throw those deep balls. I just don't like anything that's coming out of Miami right now. I think all those players I'm keeping on my bench until I see some progress.
Oh, yeah. That was an ugly game today.
Yeah, that was Miami kind of got exposed there by the Bills, who definitely seemed to want to come out and make a statement of their week 2 matchup after getting kind of trounced by the Steelers.
Oh, yeah.
I would still be willing to start Will Fuller on a week-to-week basis just because of the type of player Fuller is. If you have to take a shot at someone from this offense, you want to take a shot at someone who can make his fantasy day off one play, and that's what Fuller excels at. So I'd still be fine rolling him into my lineups as a wide receiver 3/flex play with really high upside. But yeah, I know it's going to be tough trusting any of the options from this offense for the foreseeable future if Tua is forced to miss time. That's an ugly one right there. Maybe we see Deshaun Watson on the move sooner rather than later. All right, I'm gonna take over here with my final take. Just keeping I guess this was a pseudo positive point, depending on if you're looking at it half glass full, half glass empty. But man, that Steelers team looks bad. I'm feeling kind of vindicated with preaching caution about the Steelers this offseason because, they do not it's almost like firing all of your offensive linemen and just grabbing random dudes off the bench is a bad idea. I mean, this is a team that 2 weeks in, they're looking fraudulent. Their win over Buffalo week 1 just kind of looked shaky. It looked like it was a defensive performance, and if their defense had a bad game like they did today, that the offense can't do enough to get over that hump. I mean, the Steelers are sitting at 1-1, and they could easily end up at 1-3. A couple weeks into the season because Big Ben looks bad. Like his fantasy day was kind of bailed out at the end by a passing touchdown to Najee, but Big Ben just doesn't look like he's performing anywhere near the level we've come to expect him to perform at. And part of that is because of the O-line issues that I just talked about a few minutes ago, where it's like there's clearly no running lanes. They have to abandon that aspect of their game entirely. They're going back to having to play this pace up, throw it a zillion times a game play style they tried to get away from last season, and that's not even like, at least last year that was sort of working for them. They were able to get the ball downfield and score enough that it was turning into, I mean, we saw it turn into L's at the end of the year, but W's at the beginning at least. Now it seems like the only person in this team that's any sort of trustworthy is Deontay Johnson. Everyone else is just kind of, holding on for dear life, trying to scrap together some fantasy points. But 3.8 yards per carry from Najee Harris, or the smattering of balls that everyone else that isn't named Deontay catch, like that's just not going to cut it. And to add insult to injury, Deontay got banged up at the end of the game on a play that he shouldn't even have been in on. Like, it was literally the last play of the game. He was in there for some reason. He gets hurt. Now the only bright spot on your team is potentially injured. I'm probably still forced to start Najee because where I had to draft him, but I am out on this Steelers team that it just doesn't look like they have any sort of spark or hope for the short-term future.
Yeah, I mean, really, like, especially with Najee, this is a team that people were bending over backwards to figure out how they could, pump up their price. And the simple answer was that their price is lower because of the fact that our offensive line is terrible and Big Ben can't move with his legs to get away from defenders.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he can do anywhere near what Big Ben used to be able to do. Like, he's not a pillar in the pocket anymore. He goes down way easier than he used to.
Alrighty.
Vitaly, what about you? What's your final take here?
Well, might as well just keep it negative.
Sure. I mean, this was a bad week for football, so like there's going to be a lot of negative takes this week.
So I want to talk about the Bears' offense.
Gross.
Exactly. So the Bears' defense, they held the Bengals to scoreless until they were finally able to kick a field goal in the third.
Yep.
And this game was still one field goal difference. Like, they, what was it? They held them to, their third down efficiency for the Bengals was terrible. Like, they scored a touchdown for the Bears. Like, they even helped on the offensive side of the ball. And this offense still could not do anything against the Bengals. Like, this is not a top-tier defense by any means. And still, the Bears' offense went out there and looked inept, whether it was Andy Dalton or Fields. Like, everyone had a pedestrian day on offense. They went 6 of 15 on third down, only 206 yards of offense total. Like this is not what you expect, especially when you have the caliber of talent you do. Like, you have solid wide receivers, a great running back. You have a good prospect in QB. Andy Dalton should be at least serviceable to make the ball go forward. But yet, this one feels to me like an OC or a head coaching problem more than a talent problem. I'd say the only thing you can really point to is that they have one of the worst O-lines right now in football.
Yep.
Like, coming into the season, they were ranked, people had them ranked at 28th. So, I mean, that's still not an excuse, because when you get a mediocre defense, a mediocre offense should be able to put up points, and the only reason they were able to squeak away with this game was because the defense scored for them.
Sure.
I want to like David Montgomery and Allen Robinson, but if this is the quality you get when you get a game that should have been like a maybe sneaky shootout, as we like to say, and you get 20-17, I am very off on the Bears for the rest of this season until they show me something else.
I mean, I think we know what the issue is. The issue with the Bears is Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy is a wildly overrated head coach. Yes, the O-line isn't great, but a running quarterback like Fields combined with a talented running back like David Montgomery and the passing options they have should open up the game enough that the O-line issues can be at least somewhat mitigated. We saw that with Kyler for the first couple years of his career, where it's like, yeah, he was running for his life a lot, but he was also able to extend plays with his legs and get forward progress and keep games close enough that they were still shooting out. I think the play calling. I was watching a little bit of that game. It just seemed like the play calling was uninspired garbage.
Yeah, because I mean, good example. The last game I just spoke about, the Jets game, they forced 4 turnovers and were able to just kind of easily walk away with that game. With their offense wasn't anything special for the Patriots, but yet they turned the ball over 4 times, one of those being a touchdown, and they turned them over on downs early in the game, and they kept giving their offense so many chances to do something.
Yeah,
and it was just inept. Like that was the only way I can describe this offense.
Sure. Frankie, do you got some positivity for us to start rounding this out?
We'll call it some light positivity.
I know your final point. You stole the Sam Darnold post Gase bump from me. So
yeah, he looked a little bit shaky going in last week. I mean, he barely beat the Jets, and that's never a good sign. But no, I actually really liked what I saw out there today. Like, he was moving around in the pocket. He was making some really nice play action, throws with Christian McCaffrey, and like, he wasn't afraid to just try and fit the ball in there. And I mean, I've always liked Darnold, but he had the misfortune of being drafted by the Jets, so
yep,
that kind of is just how it goes. Whether it's, again, going back to the first point, the Saints depleted coaching staff and the key defensive players being out as to, why he put up the numbers he did. I mean, 26 round 38 for 305, 2 TDs. He did manage to throw a pick, but I mean, while they're not like huge numbers like we saw out of Winston week 1, I mean, 300 yards is nothing to laugh at. I mean, especially with a team that, has Christian McCaffrey, so they are going to try and, run the ball a lot. A couple touchdowns there. It's, I'm fine. I was a little bit off on, for the same reasons why we're kind of wobblish on a lot of teams where, do I start like DJ Moore? Do I start Terrace Marshall? Do I start Robbie Anderson? I think that we're seeing for me anyways, I don't have a problem plugging in Moore or Robbie into my like wide receiver 3 maybe, or if I need a flex now, because I think that Darnold's only going to get better as the season goes, because I mean, again, he is on a new team. He's learning how to play off of Christian McCaffrey and the type of player that he is. But I mean, looking ahead to the next 5 games, Texans, I mean, their defense is not great. Their offense has surprised us, but the defense is playing pretty much how we expected to.
Well, the offense is going to take a step back too because Tyrod Taylor is injured again.
Yep. The Cowboys, who, I mean, again, our secondary, while they played good today, we're still a little bit sus. The Eagles, other than their front 7, same kind of deal. Vikings have been lining up a lot of points, so I mean, I'm not really sure what to make of their defense. And then the Giants, no, it's 3 teams in the NFC East right there. The best division in football. So I think that Sam Darnold has some good games ahead of him. He's probably got a couple iffy ones, but no, I'm fine plugging in his receivers as a flex if I need it. If I need to reach a little bit wide receiver 3, if I had to pick one of them, it's probably going to be DJ Moore.
I mean, Darnold, we knew this, even if there was a post-case bump, we knew that this was going to be part of the process. He has to basically unlearn what was, done to him with the Jets, if you can even call that development. So he's basically, he's fortunate to at least have a competent head coach in Matt Rule. I'm encouraged by the positive steps it seems like he's taking. It doesn't seem like he's been completely broken by the Jets' lack of leadership and coaching. But he is going to. It's important to take this measure because he's still going to have bad games. Yeah. He does still have to basically just redevelop as a quarterback in the NFL. Fortunately, he has a really good supporting cast around him, really good head coach. But
yeah.
It's definitely going to be a week to week thing.
Yeah, I think.
To be fair, I feel like you do need to throw a little bit of respect on DJ Moore's name because he's actually been pretty solid. He's had 2 games now, over 12 fantasy points and half point. I mean, 80 yards in back-to-back games and 19 targets through 2 games. He's putting out a pretty solid season. I think he's at least a wide receiver. He should be looked at as a wide receiver.
I think for me the biggest benefit that he has is he is playing off of Christian McCaffrey. He's
also just a very talented receiver.
Yeah.
The biggest issue we've always said with DJ Moore was the lack of touchdowns.
Oh, I meant Darnold.
Oh,
but he's, I mean, because Christian McCaffrey, we're no stranger. He opens up the field just being there. But yeah, I agree. Like I said, if there's one guy I'm gonna trust, it's gonna be DJ Moore.
All right, Nick, why don't you close us down here? What's your final takeaway?
Yeah, so let's end on a high note here. So if you need to know something about me, I'm a Javonte Williams truther. I believe in Javonte Williams. I think that this is his backfield, and it's only a matter of time. And I think that his time is coming very soon because we saw Melvin Gordon get that big run in week 1 that made his stat line look really nice. But this week he didn't have that. In fact, both running backs had 13 rushes. But the difference is Melvin Gordon had 13 for 31. Javonte Williams had 13 for 64. We know who the more explosive running back is. We know that Javonte Williams was a second-round pick. It's only a matter of time until this is his backfield and Melvin Gordon is the third down guy. So I think that we're going to see this happen very soon. I think it could be even as soon as week 3 because we see that Javonte Williams, the Denver Broncos, are facing the New York Jets. I think that this is a game where Williams could absolutely go off. He could absolutely gash his team. I think this is the time where I am all in on Javonte Williams. I think this is where he could become an RB1 for the Denver Broncos, really have some great fantasy games. So if I'm looking at this and I need a running back, Javonte Williams, the guy I'm targeting while his price is still cheap. And if I have him, I'm going to start looking at him as a flex play because I believe he's going to get more reps. He's going to get more carries, more targets out of the backfield. I believe that Javonte Williams is going to be a bigger part of this offense than Melvin Gordon has ever been. I really like him right now. I really like what he's offered so far through 2 weeks. And I believe that his role in this offense is going to grow even more with Jerry Jeudy out of the picture for the foreseeable future.
Oh yeah, for sure. We were talking about that this past week where he was a massive trade-away target for us, Melvin Gordon. It just looks like he's doing the same thing that Tyler Lockett's doing, where he's putting up good enough stat lines that people, if you just look at the aftermath, you're not really knowing what's going on in the game. So Javonte is definitely one, especially with Melvin Gordon being up there in age and his injury risk out there. It could be just any week where his value just explodes to the roof.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was just looking at the upcoming schedule for him. I mean, I'm very interested in acquiring him if I can, because he doesn't really face a tough defensive front until Steelers are a tougher matchup, but we know what happens when defenses are on the field a lot. They tire out. That's exploitable. He doesn't really face a tough defensive front until like week 7, week 8 when he gets the Browns and then the Washington football team. So yeah, that's a good call right there. Melvin Gordon looks washed. For as sad as it is to say,
Yep.
But every running back goes to the farm upstate eventually, and it seems like Melvin Gordon's on that way. All right, well, I think that'll do it for us here. Join us tomorrow as we bring you guys some more trade targets, starts, sits, and of course the waiver wire report players to try and go blow all your fab on if you didn't already do that on Eli Mitchell in week 1. I don't know anyone who did that though. Frankie, maybe? Yeah, Frankie. And as always, if you like the content that we're bringing to the table here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at the Fantasy 4-Pack, at the Fantasy 4-Pack _Ian, at Senpai Koala, and at the Foon. And you can, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, you can also find Trash Talk Sports at Trash Talk _media on Twitter and Trash Talk Sports on YouTube. And all of that information will be down in the game from end to end.
Yeah, I think